And actually, I think the current layout of the room is just flat not gonna work. I'm gonna have to move the Centurion away from the wall that it's currently on. The G-15 may not be going back into the same corner that the other one was in. Things are gonna get real chaotic. And if that sounds like a tremendous amount of work for a single person, you're right, it is. I'm gonna need some help. We've got a colossal amount of work today, so I called in some heavy hitters.
I am AJ from Forgotten Machines.
And I'm Charles from Retro Computing Ranch.
And these two absolute legends are gonna help me get some really heavy stuff into the room. We've got this wicked JEOL JAMP 10S OJ micro probe that we gotta somehow fit through the door. We got a G-15, and AJ brought something special in the back of his van that we're gonna unload in a little bit. So we got so much work to do that this intro is gonna literally be under 60 seconds, because let's just get to it, guys.
Look, I have 2 hours left. That's good.
Solid progress.
Solid progress indeed, but now comes the really hard bit. AJ brought a special delivery along with him in his van, and while I have no idea how he managed to get this behemoth into there, I know it's gonna take all three of us to get it out. Now, I know this looks sketchy, and rest assured, it was way, way sketchier than it looked. But you may also be asking yourself why the heck we're unloading it here instead of directly into the garage. And the answer is that after we managed to get the lift cart over to the concrete and hefted the big beast off, it was in desperate need of a wash, and this is where the hose is. This thing was not stored in ideal conditions long before AJ picked it up for me. And even with just a simple wash, you can see pounds of filth just pouring out of this thing. Speaking of which, what exactly is this thing? This is half of an NCR Compu-tronic from 1964. As best as I can figure out, it's an electronic invoicing machine. We still have a mountain to climb in figuring this thing out, but priority number one right now is getting it clean enough to get into the room. Oh, and remember how I said this was just half? Well, the other half is still in the van, so we get to do the whole sketchy routine one more time. This half was just as filthy as the other half, but once we got all the side panels off, I could really get in there with the hose and get everything moderately clean. But it does have one major problem, and it's the exact same problem the G-15 had. The original casters on it are just hot garbage. So we got to flip this thing up onto its side so we can get access. And miraculously, Ace Hardware had new casters in stock that were the exact same bolt pattern and the same load rating. So all we got to do for this one is unbolt the old ones and bolt on the new ones. Of all the caster journeys I've taken so far, this one was an absolute breeze. After using a leaf blower and compressed air to dry both halves of the NCR, it's time to get them into the room, starting with the computer box. And I think it'll fit quite nicely here in the corner. Then I'll wheel the console, or whatever you call this beast, right in next to it. Oh, and don't worry about the Wi-Fi router. I'm gonna reposition that here in a little bit. The room is really starting to come together amazingly now, and after spending 3 full days hunting down new tables and making all new shelving, it's time to start refilling the open space with all the stuff we removed. It's been an incredibly difficult journey, but, well, all I can say is, welcome to the new Usagi Electric. A lot of stuff has changed, and I could not be happier with how this room turned out. It's better than I could have hoped, and I would not have been able to get it here without the help of AJ at Forgotten Machines and Charles over at Retro Computing Ranch. I'll put some links to their channels in the description below. Massive thank you, guys. I've been sweating about this redo for 6 months now, and you guys came in and just look at it in here. It's so cool. Oh, I'm so excited about all the new projects that we have. Now, one quick thing. If you were really hoping that I would get down and start working on stuff this episode, this was the work. Putting the room together was the work. This was a solid 2 weeks straight of back-breaking, blood-letting, sweat-inducing work. So, what we're gonna do in this episode is I'm just gonna walk through, introduce the new projects to you guys, and talk a little bit about the schedules and when we're gonna work on certain things, starting with this one right here, the LGB21. The LGB21 is kind of a weird machine to film with. It's so long, like almost 9 feet, and it's so low to the ground, it like only comes up to my kneecaps, just about. And so I can't quite figure out where to put me in the frame and what lens to use and where to put the camera. And so it's kind of a struggle to figure out how to film with this machine, but that's a problem that I have to figure out how to overcome, like, very soon, because I want to start working on this thing immediately. The driving force behind this is that VCF Southwest is coming up in like 3 months, and it's in my backyard. I gotta go hard. I gotta, this is Usagi Electric. We gotta be as old as possible. And this thing coming from 1963 certainly qualifies. If we can get this up and going in time for VCF Southwest, I think it might be the oldest running digital computer in Texas. And it'll certainly be the oldest running digital computer at VCF, probably by a factor of like 10 years. So I hope you're looking forward to some vintage computing content on the LGP, because we're gonna go hard on this thing and get it fully up and running. It is in phenomenal shape. I got this from Tom Jennings, so Tom, if you're watching, thank you so much. And he took impeccable care of it. So I'm confident that we won't have too many dramatic problems with it. Hopefully the memory disk comes up no problems, and we don't have too many dead germanium transistors or diodes in it, and we can start getting this thing running code in time for VCF. Right next to the LGP21 is the Bendix G-15 corner. This machine actually ended up in the same corner as the previous G-15. It's just been rotated a little bit at an angle to make better use of the corner, and I really think it rounds out this edge of the room beautifully. This whole corner looks absolutely gorgeous to me. It came out way better than I could have imagined. And I think at this point you guys are all pretty familiar with the Bendix G-15 story. This one is on long-term loan from System Source Computer Museum up in Maryland, and if you want to see a fully functional Bendix G-15, the oldest working digital computer in America, check out the museum, because Bob was gracious enough to send that machine down. We got it fully up and operational, got it installed back into the museum, and you can go there and get hands-on with it today if you want. Bob, thank you so much for the opportunity to work on that machine, and thank you doubly for sending down another Bendix G-15 for us to get to work on. Now, Bob has kind of given me a little bit of free rein to really go to town on this machine. So we're gonna repaint the doors at least. We're not gonna repaint this center part here. I think that's gonna clean up just fine. The top of it has some very nasty rust on it that we absolutely need to clean up and neutralize before it gets through the steel and creates a big hole. Now, I know that a lot of people want me to leave it as is to preserve the history of the paint, but that's just not who I am. And I would really love to see this thing be a perfect, shining example that is essentially a Concours d'Elegance restoration of the Bendix G-15, and I think we can do it. Now, the repainting process is going to be a little bit involved because we have to get the right kind of crinkle paint going on here, and you guys had a ton of excellent suggestions for how to do that, and there's a couple of things that I want to try. But to get crinkle paint to do the right thing, to crinkle, you often need to bake it in an oven, but I can't remove these doors without essentially taking the whole thing down to its constituent parts, which is a death knell for the machine. So we got to find a way to repaint it with the doors and panels in situ, which means that I need it to be hot. So we're just gonna wheel this thing out into the sun in the middle of a Texas summer when it's like 115 degrees outside, and that'll be our oven. But we're gonna do some paint testing on the HP 150A oscilloscope down here. This is now living permanently in the room, and I'm super happy about it. It's pretty well calibrated. I've crammed 10 megahertz down this oscilloscope from 1955, and it handles it with no problems. It's a pretty epic scope. Now, obviously the big thing about this Bendix G-15 is that it has a crash rotating drum memory, and so we want to recoat that. The heads and the surface of the drum only have a clearance of 1/1000th of an inch, which means that the runout of the drum and the surface quality of the magnetic material that we put on there has to be like 2/10,000ths of an inch. So there's a couple of things that we got to figure out. One, I do want to scrape off some of the original magnetic coating on it and start doing some analysis on it. Try to figure out what kind of binders they used, what density of iron oxide they had in there. But the bigger one is I want to figure out what the drum itself is made of, the actual wheel. I'm pretty sure it's titanium. I worked closely with my buddy John on this and figured out the specific density of the thing, and it lines up with titanium pretty well. But I mean, you know, titanium in the 1950s, that seems, whew, boy, that's getting real early for titanium. Although Bendix was in the aerospace industry, they did have a lot of government contracts. If anybody could have pulled it off, Bendix could have. But, well, there's one way to know for sure, and that's to get an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer onto the drum itself. That'll tell us the exact composition of the metal and finally put this debate to rest. But also that'll teach us a ton about what binders we can use on the drum to lay down the new magnetic material. This is an NCR Compu-tronic from 1964. And this was the insane machine that AJ so graciously carried down for us, and we were washing with a hose because it was in pretty rough shape. I found this on eBay for a steal, but it was all the way up in Chicago. So AJ, is being the absolute legend that AJ is, went and got it for me and carried it down here for us. So AJ, all the hugs in the world. Thank you for getting this thing down here to Texas, because I'm super excited about this thing. It has a massive cadre of tubes on it that creates a pretty complex electrical side of the machine. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. I thought this project was going to be near impossible, even though I was still excited about it, because I could not find any documentation on the internet anywhere. We found a couple of brochures and like that was it. But the computer gods smiled on us, because inside of this thing was an entire stack of schematics and block diagrams. We have a hope, man. We can get this thing up and going. Now, we don't have any documentation for the mechanical aspect of it, which is this insane typewriter, calculator, punch out thing that's going on here. It's in very rusty shape, very seized up. So this is going to take some serious work to get up and going. But on the back half of it is some really exciting stuff. We're pretty sure that the memory in this thing is all done with relays. So there's these like wild looking relay matrices on the back of this mechanical portion of it that is acting as memory for the electrical portion over here, which is a collection of amplifiers and flip-flops and all sorts of other things. This is a marriage of electromechanical wizardry and computer electrical engineering. Now, we're not going to get to this for a while because we've got so many other projects in here that I think are going to take precedence. Notably, I want to get some solid groundwork done on the Bendix G-15 before we transition over to this, and I want the LGB21 to essentially be fully functional before we get in on this thing. As we continue to move around the room, we come up to the TMS 9900 Homebrew over here. We did some pretty good work in the previous episode on figuring out a parallel port for it. So my I/O design is almost finished. That I/O design spreads across 4 cards, so I have to cut a new backplane, 4 new cards for it, and to get it all together without making any mistakes. So that's why it's been kind of taking a while to get that done. That's coming up soon, hopefully. I want this thing fully finished before fall rolls around, so that way we can start focusing on something like the UE2. Now, where is the UE2 gonna go? The room is pretty full. Well, most likely once the TMS 9900 Homebrew is finished, we'll find a beautiful place to display it, and then I'll build the UE2 into that location. I'll have to figure out where to relocate my drawers here, but that is kind of what I'm thinking for when we get to UE2. Now, right next to that is the TI 980. Ironically, I've been looking for a TI 990 for like 4 years. It's like my white whale. I just can't get one. But this thing, which is, I think, rarer than a TI 990, kind of fell into my lap, and it looks amazing. It's pretty simple, and it hooks up to this ASR 33 teletype on top here. Now, we did just slap this thing together really quick, so it's in a StarTech rack with just a piece of plywood on top of it. And when we get to this, we got to make this look a lot more beautiful. I don't know if I can find a period correct rack that's the same size as this StarTech one. So maybe we'll have to find a way to pretty up the StarTech one to make it look like it's from the 1970s. And then, I don't know, maybe we'll do some veneer or something on the top plate here. I want this whole thing to look absolutely stunning so that at the next VCF, we can wheel it in. People can use a real deal ASR 33 hooked up to a pretty rare TI 980. And right next to the TI 980 is the Centurion. For the first time ever in this room, it is not against that far wall, which is, it's taken my brain a little bit of time to get used to not seeing it over there. But I do think it fits perfectly right here. It's directly across from the door, so when you walk in, this is the first thing that you see. Progress has slowed on this because I was waiting to rewire the room to get 40 amps of power over to this thing, because in order to get all the drives and everything spun up, we certainly need more than a 20 amp breaker can supply. So now that this thing is in its place, we're gonna get the wiring properly sorted for it. And actually my close friend who's coming in like 3 days is gonna help me get that knocked out. So that's one of the things that we're doing this weekend, which means that when that happens, we're ready to plug everything back in and get back to work on that Phoenix drive. It was giving us a little bit of grief, but it didn't have a head crash. I mean, I think we're probably gonna need to purge it for like a full day before we tried loading the heads, but it should fully come up and start working again once we can figure out what kind of gremlins and weird issues it was giving us. I think we had maybe some grounding problems going on between the two. So it might be a very simple fix, and then we could have this whole thing be 100% functional. But first things first, we got to get power to it. The only machine in this room that feels like it's in maybe kind of an awkward place is this PDP 1144. I couldn't really find a better spot for it, but there was no way that I was going to let this thing leave the room. I'm in love with this machine, but not because it's 1144, even though this one is pretty special. It's got the commercial instruction set in it. It's got 4 megs of memory, but I want to get it bolted up to a Floating Point Systems FPS 100 vector processor that'll give us 8 megaflops of SIMD performance. And even though I've got the front plate here, there's absolutely nothing behind it because we're still building that. I have the full card set for it, and that's it. So we got to make a backplane from scratch, and progress has been made on that. I've actually finished the layout. I'm ready to place the order. The only problem is that every time I drop the Gerbers into one of the PCB houses website, it appears to crash their Gerber viewer, which locks up the whole checkout process. So I think I'm going to need to maybe get in touch with customer support there and figure something out on that one. If I can figure that out, hopefully we'll have the new backplanes delivered within a month, and then we can start doing some testing. I think initially we're going to start with the PDP-11IF and just try to hit some of the registers in there, and then we'll start populating more and more cards. And hopefully by the time summer rolls around, we'll have a fully functional FPS 100 in this thing. And now it's time to talk about the elephants in the room. The Bomem Fourier transform infrared spectrometer and the newly acquired JEOL JAMP 10S Auger spectroscope. This is a brand new direction that I'm heading in, which is vintage scientific laboratory equipment. And I have gotten some pretty vocal and aggressive complaints about this. There are some people that are extremely upset about this direction that I'm heading in. And so I want to take this moment to address these people directly. If you have left a comment on one of my videos saying that you do not like this direction that I'm headed in, well, let me just say, I ain't doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. This is so exciting to me. I love this stuff. And if you'd have told me when I was a kid that I could have gotten to a point in my life where I could get hands-on with this, like, I would have thought you were out of your mind. This is mad scientist, evil layer type stuff. This is so cool to me. So if you hate this direction that I'm heading in, I don't care at all. Just go someplace else with your hate, because this, I think, is gonna be a ton of fun. I'm already having an absolute blast with the infrared spectrometer here. It is now fully functional, which means that we can start doing some really fun stuff, like let's blow up a capacitor, capture the smoke, and then take a spectra of it and see what's in capacitor smoke. The floppy disks are somewhat see-through. Maybe we can pump enough IR through a floppy disk that we can see what actually passes through. Like, there's so many cool vintage computing things that we can test with the Bomem. Not to mention it runs on a vintage computer. I have a PDP-1173 that I need to build into this desk, so I'm doing like a full-on desk case mod for a PDP-11, which is awesome in and of itself. And I need to restore the Bruning, I have no idea how you pronounce that, but the Bruning pin plotter up there. So we're gonna really push this Bomem infrared spectrometer as far as we can. We're gonna get it down into vacuum. We're going to get the infrared detectors on it so we can start taking spectra from UV to far infrared. And we're gonna explore pretty much all of that before we get into this madness over here, the JAMP 10S. So don't worry, I'm not gonna try and do both of these at the same time. That's just a recipe for disaster. Now, for this JAMP 10S, we have some serious hurdles that we're gonna have to overcome. Chief among which is power. I gotta figure out how to get 100 volt and 200 volt, not 120 and 240. This is a Japanese import. The vacuum system on this thing is gonna be an absolute challenge. It has, depends on how you want to count it. It's got like 4 or 5 vacuum pumps on it. This thing goes to ultra high vacuum, which is going to be like equivalent to outer space between the Earth and the moon. But if we can get that vacuum system back up and going, there's really not much keeping us from taking this thing to the limit. And it's going to be awesome because it can do electron imaging and it can do Auger spectroscopy, which will essentially tell us the molecular composition of the surface materials of certain things. And one of my serious goals that I want to do with this is figure out the molecular composition of the magnetic coatings on disc platters throughout the years. This is knowledge that has been lost because it was all trade secrets. And once a company shut down or is no longer producing 14-inch hard drives, those trade secrets got destroyed or lost to the sands of time. And we have an opportunity here to figure those secrets out. And this machine is that opportunity. I hope that you guys are as excited about this new aspect of the channel as I am, because I think we can learn some really epic stuff. And I think it's gonna be an awesome journey trying to figure out how to bring something as complex as the JAMP 10S here up, because it's gonna be several orders of magnitude more difficult than the Bomem, and the Bomem was already pushing the limits of my abilities. So this is really gonna push me, maybe even break me, but I'm gonna have a huge smile on my face the entire time. So there you go. That's the new room. This is the new Usagi Electric. I am so excited, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am, because I think it's gonna be an awesome year. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.